member Mark Sanford and Democratic Texas Congressman and Democratic Blue Dog Coalition member Henry Cuellar. Good to see you both, Congressman. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Congressman Cuellar, I'm going to begin with you because you heard what Mick Mulvaney said. He's expecting Democratic support. Will you support this tax bill?
Well, yeah, I certainly want to support some sort of tax reform. I don't know because we don't have the details, but certainly what I want to see is I want to see corporate tax rates go down so we can be competitive with other countries. I certainly want to see individual taxes go down, but I do want to have an emphasis on the middle class. And then the other point that we have as Blue Dogs is, are we going to go into deficit spending? Because remember, our deficit is growing both under Democratic and Republican administrations. If you look at the latest debt that we had, it's growing. Look at the latest deficit numbers, they're all growing. So those are some of the questions that we want to look at. But do I support tax reform? Yes.
Yeah, so are you saying that you would vote no for this bill? I mean, we do have some details. They're on the screen right now. The plan shrinks the brackets from 7 to 3. It's got 3 different rates, 12%, 25%, and 35%. They want to cut the tax rate on corporations to 20% and cut the pass-through to 25%, and collapsing individual rates, the highest being 35%. So based on those details, will you vote yes on this plan?
Well, certainly those are principles that we can support, number one, but there's still a lot of details that we haven't seen. And the bottom line is this, I've known Kevin Brady since the state legislature, and when we met with the Blue Dog leadership and the new Democratic leadership just last week, one of the things we emphasize is, are you going to be able to let the Democrats have a say-so? Because if the Republicans write a plan with no input from the Democrats, that's not really bipartisanship. That is just using Democrats as props to stand there. I want to make sure that we have a say-so on the writing of this tax plan.
So let me turn to you, Congressman Sanford. I mean, obviously, there's a big pushback on the repeal of the state and local tax, also known as SALT deductions. Republicans are also reconsidering a plan to eliminate property tax deductions, just like SALT. It hurts those in the high earners. Take a look at this. New Jersey homeowners pay the highest property tax on average, $6,470. New York follows at $7,000. Connecticut at $6,960. And by the way, these are low numbers because the numbers, as you know, go from all the way up to $15,000 to $60,000 in some areas. What's your take in terms of not including that in the tax package, since you're getting so much pushback on it, sir?
I would separate policy from political. And on the policy side, I'd say leaving it out, to me, makes sense. Why in the world would states that are in low tax environments subsidize high tax environments? I mean, I think that if you look at some of the growth of the Sun Belt, the coast of South Carolina or Florida or Texas, many people have moved out of high tax states. It's been a mass migration into lower tax states on property and other categories. So from a policy standpoint, I think it makes sense to leave it out. From a political standpoint, as you begin to go through the weighing process, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it stays in. I think that's probably the reality of the political mix that we'll see.
So what you're saying, Congressman, is you've gotten real pushback from some of these senators and congressmen in these high states areas. They're not going to vote for it if you eliminate that deduction.
Correct, and I mean, the margin is razor thin here. I mean, you can lose 2 senators, and you can do the math very quickly from there and figure out how delicate this becomes. And it's not just going to be property tax, though. It's going to be a whole host of other deductions and itemizations as you begin to really get into the weeds, to Henry's points, on some of the substance of the bill.
Yeah, Congressman Cuellar, let me ask you about Democratic support, because it does feel like there are portions of the Democratic Party that really don't want this agenda to go forward at all. They don't want the health care change. They don't want immigration change. They don't want a tax reform package because they don't want this president to be successful.
No, I disagree with that. I mean, there might be some of them, but I mean, on immigration reform, of course we want to see immigration reform, but we saw some of the the proposals that the president provided last night. I mean, those are off the, that's not a negotiation. I mean, we certainly want to see transportation reform. I want to see tax reform. In fact, when I was in the state legislature, we voted for the largest tax cut in Texas history when we had a governor by the name of George Bush. So again, some of us have been doing this for a long time, Maria, but the thing is, we want to see what the bottom line is, because you don't want to, look, the bottom line. Everybody wants to get their tax rates go down, but when it comes to their deductions, everybody's saying, don't touch my deduction, touch somebody else. So, my good friend and Mark, we know each other. We are going to analyze this very well to see what's the bottom line once you have the total package.
Congressman Sanford, I got to ask you really about why the GOP constantly gets bullied by the left when it comes to these things. There's an article in the Journal today, the GOP's Tax the Rich Temptation. And the fact is you're talking about a fourth bracket. You're talking about eliminating the state and local deduction. That basically will mean higher taxes for a portion of the people. What's wrong with wealth and accumulating wealth? Why can't you just say, yeah, the rich pay 70% of the taxes and we want to make it a more attractive environment for them so they create more jobs?
So, yeah, we do have a progressive tax system, and if you actually look at the math, overwhelmingly, the greatest percentage of taxes are paid by folks that aren't rich. I mean, if you take a school teacher and you combine it with a truck driver, all of a sudden you have an income of, let's say, $100,000, you get classified as rich. That's not at all the case, and people would say, I'm not rich.
Right, but that's the talking point you need to go with more often. That's not the talking point I hear.
No, wait. I hear you.
Okay.
I'm with you, but here's the problem. You have the President of the United States who has the loudest bully pulpit in the entire equation saying, we need to tax the rich. My rich friends don't need a tax cut.
You're right.
Meanwhile, I got folks here at home in South Carolina saying, I ain't rich. And you need to, and so I think there's some message confusion that probably needs to be a little bit tightened up from a Republican side.
I'd say. Congressman, both of you, good to have you both on the program this morning. Thanks very much. We'll be watching the developments.
Thank
Congressman
you so
Mark
much.
Sanford, Congressman Henry Cuellar there. And we'll be right back. Stay with us.